Can anybody hear me at all? Can anybody hear me? This is a test. Check, check, check. All right, perfect. Okay, let's cut off the music here. Okay, it's much better. I actually need to wash my bed here, so I apologize for it looking messy. In fact, my camera got tilted just a skosh. Trying to do a little bit of cleaning up while I'm at it, because it's been pretty messy these few days. But hello, everybody. Sorry for that delay. It's another issue with my mic, of course. The port is definitely the problem, because I actually found a way to check out the cable. The cable's perfectly fine. But I have had this mic for about as long as I've had the channel. We're going on 4 years with that, so, well, I guess it makes sense, maybe. And I've been using this boom arm for other purposes than just the weather channel. I've been experimenting with some stuff on my second channel, but that's besides the point. Yeah, so things have been kind of wacky. Why am I getting playback? Where's that coming from? Let me check something real quick. No, it's not from here. Anyway, hope everybody is doing well. This is a little bit different of a video that we have, or a stream in this case, that we have planned here. I normally don't do this, but given the fact that so many people are talking about, why didn't my area get this, why didn't my area get that, or why did this area get this and mine didn't, or why did I get this and they didn't, I figure I would try to do the best that I could to break that down. And that's if my computer decides to behave, because I'm dropping frames again. What's going on here? I wanted to do this yesterday, but the problem I have right now is my internet still never truly recovered, and I'm just randomly dropping frames again. I might have to start the stream over a third time, so I'm not connected to my Ethernet cable. Can you guys still hear me? Is it buffering? Just let me know what the conditions are. I'll see if we have to. I think I found a better way to restart the stream. But yeah, we're gonna try to go over this as best as we can. It is buffering some. Dang. Alright, so if it gets really bad, of course we'll restart and we'll try one more time tonight. But yesterday it was just lights out, like no chance at all. Okay, but basic rundown of this storm. And my time frame's still kind of limited. Oh, it's still pretty stable. Okay, good. So my time frame is kind of limited with this storm as well. I can't go back far enough like I would like to. But one thing I will say is we at least will get a good look at what the energy is looking like in the atmosphere at the time of the storm developing, and that's a key component as well. We'll still be able to see all the high pressure, so I think we'll be able to do just enough. If I waited any longer, I would have been screwed. So I guess without further ado, let's get into it. So there's actually multiple pieces to this puzzle. The best way to start out would be to look at this trough right here that's over towards Mexico. This is the second piece of energy. We had a smaller first round that actually ended up occurring over here towards Oklahoma, Texas, parts of New Mexico, and even Colorado as well, Kansas. This started to move off to the east through Saturday evening, and then this was round two that was beginning to manifest here. So the thing with this is, if I was to keep moving this forward here, hopefully it will move. Like I said, the internet's been a little bit of a problem. There it goes. So this is the first round beginning to form up right here, and then here's round two. So as this trough begins to deepen, we also have the secondary trough that has cold air along with this coming into play. So we end up kind of forming up a battle zone right here. This trough that goes over Mexico and into southern Texas, eventually makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico as time goes on. And you can see how things really start to deteriorate as we go through the day on Sunday. Then you have this reinforcing shot of cold air that's going to come in throughout the day also. But right in there, there's like a little wedge that you see pop up between these two troughs. And this is where warm air was able to sneak in. You'll be able to see it a little bit better on the temperature map that we have. But we're going to look higher up into the atmosphere for it. So this would load. That's perfect. So I'm waiting for this to load up and go back to where I need it to. Okay, there we go. So one of the big reasons why we ended up getting freezing rain off to the south, of course, is because the temperatures aloft were above freezing a lot of the time. Especially starting from this altitude at 500 millibars. 500 millibars is about 25 to 35,000 feet. So it's pretty high up. But that shallow area of warm air aloft held up all the way into the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere as well. It's slightly colder here, but anywhere where you see this green kind of touching the blue, we're just barely above freezing at that level of the atmosphere. But at that point, any snowflakes that are aloft are going to melt. And if we look into the lower levels of the atmosphere, you can see that even better. Again, kind of the same concept here. Wherever we see that green line right here, and especially if we go off to the right, you can see the yellow line, we're above freezing. So it's a general rule of thumb across the board when we're looking at the model data. We can look just above the surface too, and you'll see the same thing. In fact, the surface temperatures get a little bit colder over here, and it's at this point or just above the surface where the refreezing begins to occur. And if your temperatures were already below freezing before then, everything insta-freezes. It's going to hard freeze on contact, and that's how you get those big ice accumulations typically. However, that shallower air at the lower level of the atmosphere also is what contributed to a lot of sleet. Sleet won't have the same kind of effect as freezing rain. You won't get the huge ice accumulation. You won't get as much black ice. It bounces off the ground, whereas freezing rain literally just looks like regular rain. And then port's not holding the cable. All right, can you guys hear me now? All right. I literally just bumped the cable a little bit, and it's that sensitive. That's crazy. But biggest thing is here. What's up with the playback? Where's that coming from? Oh, I know what it is. It's my analytics window. Yeah, I was wondering where that was coming from. So to anyone that doesn't know, when I do my live streams, I have an analytics window which keeps me up to date on my stream's health, essentially. So if I'm starting to drop off frames, I'm able to know just about immediately. I'm able to see what my stream link is looking like. And of course, I also am able to look on chat, so there's that. But also, it does come with its own view, so that way I can look at what you guys are looking at in real time. So always have to be careful with the playback there, but yeah. So sorry about that confusion if you were hearing me twice, because I know I was. But anyway, So as I was mentioning before, topography also came into play with the storm, especially towards the Carolinas and also towards the southeast. We ended up getting a situation which is called cold air damming, which the cold air which will be flowing in from the north, sometimes the northeast, will end up getting caught in the Appalachians, and this is a prime example of it right here. And also, looking at this gradient right here is insane to think about. When we were live streaming for the short time that we were before we lost power, we were actually seeing severe weather occurring over here because of the gradient. The low pressure is just about right over my area at this point, which is right about here. So you can see that our surface temperatures are at about 35 degrees, so we're just barely above freezing. And then you can see right here over towards the mountains, we're into the 20s, even into the teens as we go further up towards the north. So with that, what ends up happening is these mountains end up trapping the cold air like a dam, hence the name cold air damming. And then as time goes on, we'll start to see that dam begin to break a little bit. The cold air kind of seeps out, but the worst of the temperatures end up staying reserved towards those mountains still. So what you ended up getting a lot of times over towards these regions, off towards the east, there's a rain and snow line that would develop that would be right about here, I would say. And this is where the significant ice accretion occurred here. Because over towards my area, we had about maybe a 1/4 inch of ice, which ended up melting pretty quickly because we transitioned over to rain as the low pressure would go over. So I'm going to show you exactly where these high and low pressures are, and you'll kind of see where I'm getting at here. And in fact, we'll do a little side-by-side comparison here to go along with it. So on the left side, we're going to have the precip map, and then I'm also going to have the surface temp map on here as well. Okay, so we're at about 21 hours. That's about maybe 7 frames. Alright. I actually want to go back maybe 2 frames here, truthfully. And this is what the forecast model was showing. This isn't really true guidance like I would have wanted to have, or true observation like I wanted to have. But this is pretty close to what we were experiencing at the time. Alright, so let me make sure I got the right time frame on here as well. I think this was 15 that we needed. Yep, 15Z. Okay, so you can see surface temperatures at 33 degrees, but you can see the wedge that kind of occurs here with this low pressure. This low pressure actually strengthens over time. And as this low pressure would strengthen, you can actually see the surface temp begin to rise as this moves forward. And then this is where you end up seeing that little shield of rain begin to develop, because temperatures end up going above freezing in a lot of these areas here. Eventually, the cold air begins to come back into play, and this is where we had the concern for refreezing. Now, obviously, like I said, this is not the exact surface temperature. I actually think it was even warmer than what's being shown on here. But we're just trying to more or less get a relative idea of what we're dealing with. I'm trying to see if maybe I could find a little bit a model run that's like right around the time frame of the storm actually occurring. Because what I'm trying to do is show you guys a sounding as well. We're going to go with the morning model here. A mid-morning model if I can get one. Alright. So this is a little bit of a better look. It's kind of a similar rate, I would say, in regards to the low pressure strength. But like I said, the main detail to look at there is this map's not even on the same. There it goes. That's a lot better. You can see the warm nose a lot more clearly. You can see how it's associated with the surface low here. And that's how we ended up getting this little wedge of rain kind of punching into the core. And then you can actually see the example of cold air damming perfectly. The mountains wrap around this cold air perfectly. You have a little bit of an exit point here that reaches into East Georgia. And of course, this is why Alabama ended up getting next to no winter weather, with the exception of the extreme northwestern part of the state. There was a period where the northern and maybe northeastern part of the state got a little bit of action, but it was kind of few and far in between. And then over towards the south, as I mentioned before, this is where we had the severe weather sector, because this is where our warm sector ended up developing. Why that ended up being was because of our surface low. It has its own wind shear, especially at the lower levels of the atmosphere. That increase in temperature as well created instability, and the instability was what allowed these storms that basically are depicted here on the model to fire, and some of those had enough shear at the lower levels to produce tornadoes. But if you combine all those factors in, dang, there's no soundings I can look at now, Carly, because timing. I wish I had saved some of these if I had really thought about it, you know. But with these like I said, it's with these temperatures, you would almost kind of picture a skewed T chart. I wish I knew how to generate one of these now. But basically, if you were to look at a skewed T chart, I'm going to try to pull up an example from a more recent model run. I'll try to see what today's model run looks like. I'll separate the views for now, because there's supposedly potential for yet another winter storm, but I'm not sold on it if I'm being completely honest yet. It might be for the Northeast, definitely not for my area in this case. Alright, so here's a sounding. And what I want you to pay attention to, this is kind of more of a general sounding. This is what it would look like more for snow. So you see this little zero right here. This is 0 degrees Celsius. This is basically the freezing line. So with the event that we had in the weekend, we had it below freezing at the surface, which is about 1,000 kilometers, or maybe 1,000 millibars, or geez, I'm getting it all mixed up. We're like 0 to 1 kilometer range of the surface. 1,000 millibars is the surface as well. So notice that we do get this to bow out a little bit to the right, but it never gets too far above freezing to where this would melt into rain quickly. I think this would be honestly just about as good as a sleet sounding as it would be a snow sounding. But what we were getting with the other event, and I'm going to change the color so that way you can see my marks. The thing with the other event, we ended up seeing the surface temperature, or not surface temperature, but we ended up seeing the temperature in these levels from 500 to 850. These were going all the way out to the 10-degree line. So basically, instead of seeing something like this, you would see it more like this. This would be the temperature line right here. Dew points were also at a similar level as well. So one thing about these skew T's, and one dynamic when it comes to the weather itself, is that also with the dew points, it would never exceed the temperature. You could see them match towards the lower levels, but they become further separated towards the higher levels of the atmosphere. The higher up into the atmosphere you get, the drier it tends to be. This is also kind of a rule with cold air, typically. The colder it is, the drier it is. It's the simple concept to remember there. But basically, we had the dew points above freezing along with our surface temperature towards the mid-levels to an extreme at times. Some of these were even going out even further than that, up to about maybe 20 to 30,000 feet. The temperature was above freezing. So you had this very broad, shallow area of warm air aloft. And with that, it would start out as a snowflake here in the high levels of the atmosphere, about 30, 40,000 feet plus. Then by the time we get to this level, this is melted to a raindrop, and it would stay that way all the way to the surface in the scenario that we ended up having. So what ended up happening, of course, what ends up happening here, of course, it's completely different. But it's a general idea of what the atmosphere was doing at the time of us getting that winter storm, getting that ice. And then, as I mentioned before, the other thing that really stands out, of course, is that surface low. That surface low allowed the surface temperatures to heat up. Oh, wait, this is the new model data. I have to switch back. 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. It's the first time I've really had to do it this way. I'm not used to doing it that way. I'm used to doing forecast discussions for an event ahead of time, not so much for an event that has already happened. I've only ever done this maybe one other time, and that other time I was actually smart enough to remember, hey, let's actually save the QT chart. The 3-day ice age. Nice. 409 and 339 without power. Sorry, I just now saw those chat messages, by the way. Yeah, that sounds about right, because those guys in Tennessee actually got slammed. They definitely got some of the worst of it. Because the thing with me, in my area, for example, in Georgia, was we ended up getting, we did end up getting 1/4 inch ice. But like I said before, towards the end of the event, we shifted over to rain because our surface temperature went above 40 degrees. And there was nothing that really wrapped around on the backside. Tennessee, however, was very unlucky with this. Tennessee ended up getting snow on the backside of this, and then also the big rapid freeze to go on top of what was already falling. So even if there was a point where it did start to melt again, by the end of the night, it refroze, and then we still ended up having black ice. We ended up having ice on the power lines. And if with the power outage situation already bad over there, it's just kind of throwing fuel on the fire essentially for these guys, unfortunately. And the other thing about it is, like I said, with this storm having such a strong low pressure, because this thing was flirting with maybe even, on some models, maybe even being below 1,000 millibars, which is really strong for low pressure in general. A lot of these areas towards Virginia and North Carolina ended up getting a lot of freezing rain and sleet compared to snow, simply because all the warm air that was being ejected into this shallow part of the atmosphere here. Areas to the north where it was cold all across the board here, this is where we ended up getting pretty much all snow there. But really it just has a lot to do with the surface low and ultimately this high pressure here too, kind of lagging back. Now, if anyone was there for my forecast discussions that we had talked about, then you would know what I was referring to with that, where that high pressure ended up setting up was going to be a key component. How you doing, Justin? But the thing with this high pressure is it definitely lagged a lot further back than I thought it would. And it also stayed a lot further off to the west to go along with it. This combined with that low pressure as well, being a little bit further off towards the west here, before we ended up getting this low pressure in Mexico to manifest further, I do think resulted in the larger snow shield than anticipated, increased amount of moisture, and also warm air being injected into the storm in general. I think the state that undoubtedly got it the worst might be Mississippi as well, because they had freezing rain. If you look over towards the central part of the state, they had frozen precipitation really that started Saturday evening all the way into the end of Sunday. So you're talking 24 hours plus of freezing rain and sleet falling over towards these areas. So when you put 2 and 2 together with this, it was a recipe for disaster there. And unfortunately with this storm, the fatality count's actually pretty high. We're sitting at 76 right now. This is one thing that we were very worried about. And while I'd say a lot of people would argue that the storm was overhyped, it really is subjective to the area. Hey Elaine, and thanks for becoming a member. I appreciate you. So, unfortunately, a lot of the people who didn't make it, a lot of it was due to extreme cold and shoveling snow, actually. And then also improper generator use was an issue. I haven't seen too many, thankfully, from car crashes, at least not immediately. Most of the people who had trouble was actually in New York, surprisingly. But some of the key states that were impacted when it came to freezing rain, like Mississippi, for example, it was unfortunately trees falling onto homes, so it's still a problem. Holy cow, you did? Wow. Uh, Feel free to show the picture if you'd like. I'll show it on here if you want, or just send it to me in general so I can see it. Because that was one thing that I was worried about too, but thankfully, I guess we warmed up just enough to be spared here. Because I'm surrounded by trees. So when I was hearing about what was happening over towards Minnesota and areas further off towards my west as well, with that occurring, I was like, I'm not too sure. I feel good about that. But just glad that you're safe. Holy cow. Also, John, I don't know if you know, but Ohio had two fatalities from snowplow incidents, actually. But some pictures that I've also observed from Mississippi, for example, trees falling on houses. That sounds about right, unfortunately. And then also from some of what I've seen, the damage was like a tornado. It went through some of the forest almost, with the way that the trees had gone down. So yeah, it's pretty surreal that we're kind of in that situation. By the way, here is the pictures that Justin has to show us here with the tree. So this tree basically is split down the middle right here. And then I think we also had a little bit of an explosion up towards where this branch was, because that definitely doesn't look normal. Yep, this is where the blowout had occurred right here. That's wild. That is absolutely wild. Thankfully, it wasn't a much bigger explosion, too. So the explosion actually looks like it occurred right about here. You can see some damage up here, even. So this branch ended up getting completely blown off. And then this caused the foundation of the tree almost all the way down to the roots. Wow. The concussive force was to such a point where even this branch got blown off, and you can see how it's also pretty much cracked and frayed as well. That is insane. Yeah, you have lost a lot of trees. I will say that. Like I said, I'm just glad you're safe, man. Like, holy cow. I wonder if you ended up hearing the noise. What did that sound like? I wonder. It had to be terrifying. Wow. 4 in 1 year is crazy. And if it was just within 2026 alone, that's even crazier. Dang, I wish we could have got more SQTs on this. It's probably similar to what it sounds like whenever they're struck by lightning. I have heard that noise before. I've heard it quite a few times. I mean, I've heard trees fall too, also, but that was because of Hurricane Zeta, all the way back in 2020. All right, so Justin, I'm pretty sure you're wondering how bad it got for your area. So it looked like, based off model guidance here, peak time for your event where you had all snow looked like it was overnight. So it was right at about 12Z. By the time you got into about 18Z, which is early afternoon, the storm was already starting to slow down. But the heaviest band looks like it occurs pretty early in the day. You got 8 inches of stuff. That's really the best way to describe it. Yeah, man. Shout out to Justin. Justin here is another one of the storm spotters we work with here. Thankful to have him. Also thankful he's okay. Thankful for all of you, everyone who got impacted here. I'm glad you guys made it out, because that storm looked like it was going to be really ugly at one point, and I think we got off a lot better than we thought. It's just crazy to me that some people actually complain about that. It's like, we didn't get an inch of ice. You should be grateful, because I have seen what that does, and I can assure you, you don't want any part of it. I'm sure a lot of other people that did experience the worst of this storm would tell you, we can trade places if you'd like. Just make sure you get through it. Because like I said, there's 76 people that are not here anymore. That sounds about right. Oh, you were up till 4:30? Daggone, I wish I'd known. That doesn't surprise me at all that you ended up catching thunder sleet and thunder freezing rain. I would have been the first. I was one of the first people that started kind of peeping that possibility. Because when I first saw the low begin to strengthen, I think this was probably on Wednesday or Thursday, I was saying, I kind of have this fleeting suspicion with the way things are set up, that warm air towards being as shallow as it is, low strengthening, a little bit of moisture being injected into it as well. Maybe we had something there. How you doing, G, bro? So I started looking at the readings for most unstable cape, and that's how I was able to start finding values. And it's also what helped me kind of pick up on that severe weather setup. Because just the way that surface low kind of pulled everything into place with the moisture from the Gulf, and then also just the warm nose that it ended up bringing in was going to be the key factor. Yeah, I ended up seeing some of those radar images on Twitter. Hey, Torex. Doing something a little bit different today. Don't want to zoom in on this. Don't want to zoom in this time. So we're actually going over the winter storm that just happened. I'm sure this isn't getting out to the masses entirely, but I figure that I'd at least try to go over what happened. So that way, at least for our community, there's clarity. I know you guys probably aren't as quick to go off the rails like other people. But yeah, we already know that there are a lot of dynamics that went into this storm here, and a lot of rapid changes that some models, well, I'd say they did a relatively good job, but I think maybe the local news networks maybe could have conveyed it a little bit better. I know there's probably a whole bunch of other underlying issues with that there, because I'm sure the meteorologists don't get to use their Hey. No, hey, John, don't do that. Apparently, you weren't the only spotter that I've worked with that ended up going off road. Motley ended up being trapped for a little bit. Oh yeah, John's also a storm spotter here. He's just recently He's just recently allowed us to show his feed as well. Still be careful out there. I don't want to see anything happen to you guys. And at some point, hopefully, I'll be doing that too. But right now, I got to get a vehicle. But yeah, also, let me actually share John's channel so that way you can give him a sub, because he's on that road to 1,000. Definitely would love to see him get there. So also, I would love to. I'm trying to make a role for the Storm Chasers on Discord, so that way we could have like group chats at some point as well. Because I'll be looking to ask you guys for some advice as I would start chasing around my area this year, hopefully. Because I'm almost to the point where I can get my vehicle situation straightened out. But, you know, right now, times are kind of hard. And then also, I mean, even though people are getting out of pocket saying, oh, I'll never trust meteorologists again, I can understand the frustration because a lot of people did end up preparing for this winter storm. If we really think about it, when we first did the discussion on Tuesday, the model data was so in line with each other. Model data was so in line and in agreement with each other, to where it would kind of be hard not to feel nervous, and it was hard not to have a lot of confidence. And then the shift happened, and then yeah, everything just kind of went to hell. So, you know, there's that. If you want, John, you can share your link, or I can share it for you. Either one. Speaking of which, there's other channels we need to feature on here. But plain and simple. But I'm plain and simple though, and let me try to see if I can find the link. There we go. Dude, oh, I gotta move Epic Pen real quick. I don't even have to take it off of here, just move it. There we go, got it. Alright, so I'm pinning his channel link there as well, so that way you guys can find it pretty easily. Yeah, be sure to give him a sub, give him a follow. That's no problem, man. You guys are helping me out. Obviously, I'm going to help you out where I can. I mean, I don't have the biggest channel, but if I can help in some way, I definitely will. Alright. So, Torex, just to put you back up to speed, just to get you up to speed, what we were talking about with the event itself. Nice. But, just to get you up to speed, Torex, what we were talking about was the early stages of this event. We were talking about the upper level setup, how the temperatures ended up transitioning from the upper levels all the way down to the surface, being the key component to our setup, why things happened the way they did for each area, at least from Sunday onward, because I can't get data from Saturday anymore. I actually wanted to do this video yesterday, but my internet has still been kind of wonky. It still is now, honestly, because my router is not working. I'm strictly working off of Wi-Fi. The stream has been kind of hit or miss right now. We've been dropping some frames, but we're still working. We're still up. We're still live, though. So I guess that counts for something. But basically, yeah, you kind of can read what's going on here with the troughing here. And then there's an extra piece of energy here. There's a little bit of a remnant trough there as well. So this was also a big reason why we had such a huge snow shield from basically Arizona all the way up into parts of Virginia. It's crazy to think that to this day that I've only maybe ever seen something like that once before. The fact that I've gotten to cover a snow shield that's been about 2,000 miles across is ridiculous to think about. It's not something I would expect to see again anytime soon. think maybe the ice storm in 22 for Texas might have had a span similar to that, but I think it was only about half as much. But yeah, this is the general idea with that storm. Here's that piece of energy here. Here's our upper level trough here. Here's our secondary trough here. So this is our piece of energy there. Then here's the Arctic blast that lags in behind it. But really the key component for a lot of these states over towards the deep south was going to be the piece of energy that pops up here. And then if you look at how this corresponds with the surface temperature, quick look at that. Or not surface temperature, all the temperatures at different levels of the atmosphere. This would be closer towards like peak time of the event itself. A lot of these areas are above freezing at the mid to upper level range. Towards the mid levels, it's even more profound. The profile that we ended up getting here. And if I keep going lower into the atmosphere, this is why a lot of areas ended up getting freezing rain instead of snow. Because some of these areas, especially over towards Tennessee, surface temperature was like 18 degrees. So when you put that all together, you're thinking, why didn't we get snow? It was frozen at the surface, but towards the upper levels right here, you're at 2 degrees Celsius. So you're at about maybe 35, potentially up to 40 degrees. Some of the skew T-charts that I observed, and I wish I had saved them. I feel really dumb about not doing that. These skew T-charts were showing a difference of about nearly 10 degrees, but obviously now I can't look at the soundings. They're tossed. So that's obviously why a lot of us ended up seeing more freezing rain. Then, do I really need to show the surface temperature at this point? So this is what the surface temperature looked like around peak time. You can see it. Classic situation of cold air damming. So the topography actually comes into play here as well, along with that low pressure. So I'm about to do a little thing here. I'm going to move this up to the 12Z time frame here. Oh, this is wrong. This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted here. Alright. So here's our warm nose there. And then we'll add this in here. I actually want to go back one more run. Okay, so peak time for the event was overnight. This was some of the remnants from the morning, and then we're going to do this right here. So if you look really closely, you can kind of see it. I'm going to actually jump this to 6, so that way we're on the exact same page here. Here's our low pressure here. Pin post isn't working? What? Are you serious? Hang on a second. Alright, let's try. Alright, I got another way to do this. Let me try this. Let's try this then and replace that there. That should be better. I don't know why it didn't work, why it stopped working. Somebody said it was working for a moment. I think it was Torex. But anyway, this. Okay, that one worked. Okay. Oh, that was the. Oh, I know why. That was the live stream. I don't know how I ended up sharing his live stream, but okay. All right. I'm pretty sure I ended up copying his link, but apparently gave me his live feed. Thanks, YouTube. No problem. We're all about community here for the most part, and a little bit of madness. But I don't know if you see that, Torex, but this is also how we ended up getting our severe weather setup over here too. I think you can put 2 and 2 together with the surface low and these temperatures here. But it's like I said here, surface temps were at 21, upper levels of the atmosphere cold, not quite as cold. So you put 2 and 2 together, you get that. And that's kind of the same thing that happened to Arkansas there as well. Yeah, this is what you call a temperature gradient here. It's a classic case of a temperature gradient. Strong low pressure, warm air advecting to the north from the Gulf, so you get moisture included there. Surface low always creates its own level of vorticity, and there you go. The rest is history. We've got several tornadoes as a result of it, or at least radar confirmed tornadoes. I don't know if the survey team has gone out yet or not. I haven't heard anything back as of late. But yeah, you can see the warm nose here from that low pressure pushing up towards the north. That's why a lot of these areas would shift over to rain. But unfortunately, with the surface temperatures towards these regions dropping back below freezing, and doing so in rapid fashion, refreeze ends up occurring over here. It's where the eastern half of Tennessee and Kentucky ended up getting slammed. Areas further off towards the south, like my area, we got spared mainly due to the fact that the cold took longer to get here. We ended up switching over towards rain in the back half of the event, and we basically were good from that point onward. Oh, so we had one rated EF2. Okay. That sounds about right. Because there were some pretty strong rotation signatures at one point. Those were quick spin-ups, but when they did flare up, though, I did see a couple of velocity signatures that really kind of caught my eye. I think that was before we had just lost power here. And then from that point, we were done. The issue was, though, the power came back on, but our internet didn't. Just bad luck on my part. It is getting cold out here right now. I can actually feel a difference right now in my room. So after this stream's over, I'm definitely gonna try to knock out the gym and then try not to freeze myself into Kingdom Come. But anyways, yeah, that's basically the general rundown. For the whole event itself, we had a lot of areas that had surface temperatures below freezing, but we ended up seeing in the upper levels that wasn't the case at all. It was actually quite a bit warmer, so we had a lot of melting occurring in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere, refreezing occurring at the cold levels, the lower levels. Jeez, I can't speak at all. And well, this is how we got the result that we got. I think we've already dropped below 30 over here. Feels like 28 at least right now. Wind chill's probably even worse than that. It probably feels like it's 28. Okay, so anyone have questions while we're at it? I think we're at 31 actually. Oh no, we're at 33. 30s right now is swimming weather. Ah, hey, we're the same temperature. Bet it feels cold over there. We could do an observation real quick, I guess. Okay, this is where we're at currently. Not, whoa. Oh, we're actually I'm a little colder than you are right now because we have our index at about 28. Ooh, you're sitting at 10? You got 29. So yeah, you're about in the same boat as me. Just a little further to the north here. Well, not. So yeah, in reality, I think we're both about the same. Maybe about 1 or 2 degrees in surface temperature difference. Air temperature is probably exactly the same. Yep. And another frigid night awaits. See what the winds are looking like too. Thankfully, not as much of that. No, I wouldn't say that you are. Because once the temperatures get below zero, it's pretty nasty. Nothing good, nothing good really comes from that. I've learned that lesson the hard way. Well, John disagrees. That's fair. Oh. Okay, so, there is one other thing we could do. There is one other thing we could do. Well, I'm used to working in the heat, so it doesn't bother me as much. I'm used to working the heat and humidity. I've dealt with 105 and high humidity. It's not great. I'll be the first to tell you that. It's definitely not great, but I would rather deal with that than work in -5. The lowest temperature that I've worked in was about 7 degrees, and I was doing landscaping. And I was doing a cleanup job, so I was removing a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs as well. Okay, I'll check that out right now, amputee. Did you tag me in it, or... Oh, wait, no, I found it. Never mind. You don't need to. Okay. Yeah, you guys still have something left over. But this is amputee's photo, by the way. Amputee's in Texas. They got hit pretty hard as well. I haven't even gotten into the forecast yet. This is actually the first time I've gotten a look at the GFS today. Oh, that was on Sunday. Dang. Yeah, the event was pretty much over for you guys by that point. Alright, so this is my first look, so this is kind of more of a reaction for me in a way. Seems like we're going to be stuck with the cold air over here. We have quite the ridge that looks like it forms up over towards the western half of the country. Have another surface low that doesn't really manifest into anything, which is good. It's towards the 30th where I'm kind of interested in things right now. Between the 30th and the 31st. Little clipper system doesn't really mean much of anything. But then we have to watch this little piece of energy pop up here. Looks like there's not much moisture available this time around, so you don't really see much out of that. At least initially. Then you see this begin to occur here out towards the Atlantic, and then we're looking at maybe a mountainous snowstorm over here. Southeast doesn't really look to be in the line of fire. It's really looking like it could be a nor'easter for the mid-Atlantic. There's actually some pretty big snow totals that we could expect here if this ends up banding out the way that it's going to. This isn't quite as big of a storm for the Northeast as much, so there is a pretty good chance that maybe Boston over towards New England gets a little bit of action, but it looks like the interior Northeast will be spared, at least from this track here. Then from this point beyond, it looks like we finally begin to level off a bit towards the eastern half of the U.S. Still pretty active, but not quite as bad. And then we'll watch this just continue to move through. And then from this point, we're past no man's land. Obviously, looking at these runs from 300 plus hours out, some of these look crazy. Yes, I get it, but I wouldn't hype these up. It's a fool's game trying to do that. All right, Justin. If you want me to show it, I'll be happy to. All right, let's have a look at the Euro, see what that other storm for this week is looking like, because that really looks like the main talking point here. A lot of people have been making a thing of that, but one thing about the Euro is it hasn't really been showing much of anything with that, at least not initially. This is the most that I've seen from the Euro for this storm system. It seems like it's leaning into the GFS, but we're still about 4+ days out. But it is looking pretty similar. But I see an earlier exit with this and a much stronger storm to go with it. So it could be exclusively a mid-Atlantic and Carolina event. We'll have to see how the snow shield ends up ultimately phasing itself out. But at least from this look, it doesn't look all that too big to send on Discord. You gotta love it. If you send it to me on X, I should be able to view it. I should be able to show it on stream. You have to send it to me directly, or you would have to post it and then tag me. At least that's how I think it works. I'm not even sure. There's a couple other models I might look at with that last storm here. It looks like for the most part all of us aren't going to be dealing with it though. Obviously I'm going to be covering it nonetheless. Come on. You know you want to comply. Come on. Body armor really quick while I'm at it. Now that's interesting right there. Canadian has a solution that includes my area. Alright, sure thing. So this brings an opportunity into my neck of the woods, but I still don't think we get much out of it. I think cold air damming comes into play again with this. Ooh, look at that there. There's a little bit of a pass off of low pressure here. This low ends up starting to decay, and this new one kicks in here. And this is where we end up getting the possibility of maybe more winter weather. Yep. And this closer pass ultimately ends up bringing more of the coast into play. I still think at the end of the day that across the board, interior northeast isn't really getting much out of this. At least not from first looks here. That's pretty much the general amount of model data that I would have available to use. I don't think we're in range of much else. British model isn't in range, and I don't think Icon is either. Oh, yes, it is. Alright, so this is what the Icon has to offer. Icon's not really showing a whole lot of anything. So there's a little bit of model discrepancy here, but not a lot. So, interesting scenario there. Could be a last minute forecast situation with that there as well. I wonder what was on my phone there. Okay, so do we have any final questions, by the way? Because I think that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Oh, it's sending over our necks. 1 second here. 1 second. It'll pop right up once it's delivered. All right. It's set up for whenever it does. Whenever it does deliver, I'll be able to see it immediately. Any idea about potential temperatures? We could check that out real quick. Let me check out snow totals really fast with this upcoming system, and then we'll go from there. Bullseye looks like it could be, excuse me, could be over towards Virginia again, especially eastern half of the state this time. Carolinas. This is a question mark over here. Georgia, East Tennessee, Kentucky. Haven't seen anything regarding freezing rain totals with this. I want to make sure I catch that as well. Nothing there. All right, let's check out the temperatures, because that's really going to be the biggest talking point for all, or at least all of us that are in here. Well, let's go ahead and... Why did I click that again? Why did I click that again? I'm already having brain farts. What is wrong with me? Okay, so just let that load in. These next few days, I will tell you, are not going to be the most pleasant. We're steadily going to warm back up, but we're actually expecting another drop later this week. And there you see it right there, up towards the, unfortunately, up towards our part of the country. This is going to make another big push. Saturday morning is going to be kind of brutal. Sunday is where it really gets to be the worst. You guys are going to be sitting in the teens just like me. Further up towards the north, we're back in the single digits for the morning. And some areas even further up towards the lakes were below 0. Eventually, as that storm system moves through, we do end up kind of bouncing back over time. It's a little bit of a slow process. But by this time next week, we're probably sitting a little bit closer to average. By early... Oh, too big for... That's no big deal. It's okay. Oof. But I do have good news for you guys. We're getting back towards average temperatures by the early part of February, at least for a brief period. But I don't think the cold's done with us yet either, though. When I've looked at long-range forecasting, I've seen a lot of indicators that have led me to believe that we could be in line for maybe one more storm for those of us further to the south. Towards the north, especially towards Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, I think that's going to be a battle zone and a bit of a hot spot. So there is that. So there is that as well. But with all of that in mind, if anyone else has questions, let me know. If there's anything else you'd like to see, I'm happy to show it. I might be grabbing my robe here in just a second, in fact, because it's getting pretty daggone cold. I still think February is pretty wide open as well. I'm gonna get a little creative here. There. There. If it looks goofy, I don't care. Screw it. Laugh if you want. But we only got up to 40, so would have liked those extra 4 degrees. It would have been nice, but it's all right. But yeah, the season is still long. The wintry season is far from over. Really doesn't end until about early March. And even then, I've still seen stuff happen then. Plus, we're in a really weird weather pattern in general, so there is that. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I guess we'll call it a stream. There is one thing I'm looking at right now, but I'm not really putting a whole lot of merit into it. Jonesing for tour season. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm ready too. I just want to get a vehicle so that way I can get going. I've seen snow here in April as well. Definitely have in March. So, like I said, I'm not counting anything out yet. I get the feeling we could be in line for one more storm. When that would be, if it does happen, hard to say at this point. But you do get that kind of feeling. And then when I look at the weather pattern, it really kind of gives me that look as well. Really, it's up to what Mother Nature as to whether or not she manifests. But appreciate you being here, by the way, Elaine. Appreciate you also becoming a member again. I don't know what we're going to be doing for membership videos because, I mean, I tried those other ones. It just wasn't really sticking, it seems. So it kind of sucks. But that's how the game goes sometimes. We'll figure it out. But gonna hit the gym and then I got some guitar tracking to do tonight. So with that in mind, folks, I appreciate you all being here and you all have a wonderful rest of your night. Stay warm and I will see you with a regular video tomorrow. Everybody take care.